Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the intricacies of military history's most pivotal battles. I'm your host, General Biography, and today we're going to explore one of the most fascinating conflicts of the ancient world, the Battle of Pylos, fought in 425 BC. This battle was a masterclass in strategic innovation, showcasing the cunning tactics of Athenian General Demosthenes and the unyielding determination of the Spartans. To understand the significance of this battle, we must first examine the historical context in which it took place. The Peloponnesian War, a devastating conflict between Athens and Sparta, had been raging for nearly a decade. The war was sparked by a complex web of alliances and rivalries between city-states, with Athens seeking to expand its empire and Sparta determined to protect its territory. In the spring of 426 BC, the Athenians launched a series of raids against Spartan territory, including a successful attack on the city of Methone. This bold move was designed to weaken the Spartans and gain control of the sea lanes, which were crucial for trade and communication. The Spartans, however, were not ones to back down from a challenge. They responded by sending a large army to the region, led by the experienced General Brasidas. In the early spring of 425 BC, Demosthenes, with his fleet of 40 ships and a contingent of hoplites, set sail for Pylos. His plan was to establish a fortified base in the region, from which he could launch further attacks against the Spartans. The choice of Pylos was strategic, as it provided a secure anchorage for the Athenian fleet and controlled access to the Bay of Navarino. The area around Pylos was characterized by rugged terrain, with steep cliffs and rocky outcroppings that made it difficult for armies to maneuver. The island of Sphacteria, which lay just off the coast of Pylos, provided a natural fortress for the Athenians. Its narrow beaches and limited access points made it an ideal location for a defensive position. As Demosthenes arrived at Pylos, he found that the Spartans had already begun to fortify the area. However, the Athenians were able to establish a foothold on the island of Sphacteria, which would prove to be a crucial factor in the battle to come. The earliest history of the Battle of Pylos is marked by a series of skirmishes and raids between the Athenians and Spartans, with both sides seeking to gain the upper hand. The Athenians, with their superior naval power, were able to control the sea lanes and launch attacks against Spartan territory at will. However, the Spartans, with their formidable army, were determined to protect their land and drive the Athenians out of the region. This strategic location would prove to be a crucial factor in the battle to come. As the Spartans, led by Brasidas, arrived at Pylos, they found themselves facing a formidable Athenian force. Demosthenes had carefully chosen his position, utilizing the natural defenses of the island to his advantage. The Spartans, with their superior numbers, attempted to launch a series of attacks against the Athenians, but were repeatedly repelled. One of the most significant factors contributing to the Athenian success was their innovative use of fortifications. Demosthenes had ordered the construction of a series of walls and trenches on the island, which provided his troops with excellent protection from the Spartan attacks. The Spartans, on the other hand, were forced to launch their assaults across open terrain, making them vulnerable to Athenian counterattacks. As the battle raged on, the Athenians began to gain the upper hand. Demosthenes' clever tactics and the bravery of his troops allowed them to hold off the Spartan attacks, despite being outnumbered. The Spartans, however, refused to give up, and the fighting continued for several days. One of the most pivotal moments in the battle came when a group of Athenian hoplites, led by Demosthenes himself, launched a daring counterattack against the Spartans. The Athenians, utilizing their knowledge of the terrain, were able to outflank the Spartans and attack them from the rear. This bold move caught the Spartans off guard, and they were quickly forced to retreat. The aftermath of this counterattack saw the Spartans regrouping and reassessing their strategy. Brasidas, realizing that a direct assault on the Athenian position was unlikely to succeed, decided to try and blockade the island. The Spartans began to construct a series of fortifications on the mainland, hoping to cut off the Athenian supply lines and starve them into surrender. However, Demosthenes was one step ahead. He had anticipated this move and had already made arrangements for a relief force to be sent from Athens. The arrival of these fresh troops allowed the Athenians to maintain their position on the island despite the Spartan blockade. As the battle drew to a close, it became clear that the Athenians had emerged victorious. The Spartans, having suffered heavy casualties and failed to achieve their objectives, were forced to withdraw from the area. Demosthenes and his troops, on the other hand, had secured a significant victory, one that would have far-reaching consequences for the course of the Peloponnesian War. The bravery and cunning of Demosthenes and his troops, combined with their clever use of fortifications and terrain, allowed them to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds and secure a stunning victory. The Athenian victory at Pylos had significant consequences for the broader course of the Peloponnesian War. The capture of over 400 Spartan hoplites, including many prominent citizens, dealt a severe blow to Sparta's prestige and military capabilities. This loss forced the Spartans to reevaluate their strategy and seek a more cautious approach, which in turn allowed the Athenians to gain the upper hand in the war. One of the most significant outcomes of the Battle of Pylos was the shift in the balance of power between Athens and Sparta. The Athenian victory demonstrated that their innovative tactics and clever use of fortifications could overcome even the most formidable opponents. This realization emboldened the Athenians to pursue a more aggressive strategy, which would ultimately lead to further successes and a period of unprecedented prosperity for the city-state. In the years following the Battle of Pylos, the Athenians continued to press their advantage, launching a series of successful campaigns against Spartan allies and territories. The Spartans, still reeling from their defeat, struggled to respond effectively to these challenges. As the war dragged on, it became increasingly clear that the Athenians had gained the upper hand, and the Spartans were forced to seek a negotiated peace. The Peace of Nicias, signed in 421 BC, marked a significant turning point in the conflict. This treaty, brokered by the Athenian general Nicias, brought a temporary end to hostilities between Athens and Sparta. While the peace was short-lived, it did provide a brief respite from the fighting and allowed both sides to regroup and reassess their strategies. The legacy of the Battle of Pylos can be seen in the many ways it influenced the course of the Peloponnesian War. The innovative tactics employed by Demosthenes and his troops set a new standard for military strategy, and their use of fortifications and terrain would become a hallmark of Athenian warfare. The bravery and cunning displayed by the Athenians at Pylos also inspired future generations of soldiers and leaders, who would go on to achieve great things in the service of their city-state. The importance of strategic innovation, the value of clever tactics, and the enduring power of the human spirit are all timeless themes that remain relevant in modern times. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography, reminding you to keep marching toward victory.